Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we're continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and the Ukraine. Now, it is not being widely reported just how bad conditions are for the Ukrainian military. Now, at the tactical level and the essentially the strategic level, because of the ongoing Donbass offensive by Russian forces, the situation has become untenable for Ukrainian forces. If we look at the key target, the town of Pokrovsk, and then we look just to the south, we can see what has been occurring day in and day out. So we're going to go just south of Pokrovsk towards the town of Seladov. And if we look at what has happened, again, over the last few days, a rapid Russian advance taking over that town. If we proceed even further to the south and we go back a few days, and I had been looking at this very, very closely on previous videos. We had been looking at these dual towns here, Hirnyek and Kurhivka. And if you look, you can see that the Russians positioned themselves in a flanking operation to the north, to the south of the town. They fixed those Ukrainian combat groupings in those locales, proceeded to initiate a very intense GLONASS guided bombing campaign, along with the use of heavy artillery. And then look what's happened. Both towns have fallen. Now, you're not hearing much about this. You don't hear much about the actual conditions on the battlefield. You do not hear about just how precarious the situation is for the Ukrainian army. Things are falling apart for the Ukrainian military. It is an incredibly serious situation in terms of what is happening in the Donbass, and to a lesser extent, further to the south by southwest, within the vicinity of Volodar. After Volodar, things really unwrapped for the Ukrainian military. They fled from Volodar, those forces that were able to get out, and then the Russians have rapidly advanced, taking large amounts of territory from Ukrainian forces. And again, we're going to go back in time so you, the viewer, can see exactly what has happened. And again, feel free to look to the north, to the south as well. And then we'll fast forward. So this collapse is quickening. It's getting much quicker. The Ukrainian army is losing territory really at an unprecedented rate. We would have to really go back to the early stages of the war, where there was this rapid column-esque advance by Russian forces. But what is happening now is much different. The Russians have established essentially a World War II type of front line across the entire theater of operations, and they're pressing that front line forward. And that front line right now is advancing at a much quicker pace than we've ever seen before, as I just said. And the reason for that is you are watching in real time the collapse of the Ukrainian military in the Donbass sector of operations. Now, furthermore, there are reports that the Russians are amassing an additional 200,000 troops from a line that exists from Zaporizhia all the way to the east of what was Volodar. 200,000 Russian forces. Now, are the Russians going to initiate an offensive the likes of which we are seeing in the Donbass that has been highly, highly successful? Probably. When you see this sort of general collapse that you are seeing now in the Ukrainian military in the Donbass, and you start to see new Russian offensive operations, whether it's in Zaporizhia with those 200,000 troops, or a new push within the area of Kupiansk, Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, this is going to get out of hand very, very quickly for the Ukrainian military. And it's going to be a shock to the system here in the United States and Western Europe. Because remember, everyone was being told that the Ukrainians are defeating the Russians. The mainstream narrative has been, hey, look, the Ukrainians actually invaded the Russian Federation. So when suddenly you then start to hear about the mainstream media talk about the collapse of the Ukrainian military, you start to see rapid advances by Russian forces, and then you start to see the collapse of the Ukrainian military. You start to see the Ukrainian military pleading with its Western benefactors for direct intervention. And you're kind of seeing that already. The play by Volodymyr Zelensky when he came to the United States and essentially demanded the deployment of Tomahawk cruise missiles to strike deep inside the Russian Federation, that was essentially a play for the direct intervention by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And at this point, the West is saying, no, it's not going to happen. Now, with the upcoming election here in the United States, that could change. The possibility of a general collapse of the Ukrainian military compounded with the what is essentially what could be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, up to trillions of dollars in natural resources that the West was looking to pillage from eastern Ukraine. Well, that's no longer going to be on the table. The Russians are going to have control of that, and those big dollar investments in terms of food security, the ability to harness the natural resources, coal, iron, steel, what have you, other minerals that are in eastern Ukraine. Again, that goes by the wayside. But they were counting on that. These companies were counting on seizing control of those resources. Now, if that's off the table, what happens? And will it be back on the table in terms of direct Western intervention? And I mean the actual deployment of Western boots on the ground fighting Russia in a Third World War scenario. A lot has been invested. It has become almost what you would call too big to fail. So if it's too big to fail, what additional resources will the West contribute to prevent a general collapse of the Ukrainian military in the Ukrainian state? And you're watching it in real time. Again, I'm using a Ukrainian mapping service that is documenting what is happening in real time with this deep state map. Again, let's go back. Again, the Donbass offensive over the last month of October. Here we go. One more time, in case you missed it. So October 1st, the Donbass, Zaporizhia joint offensive operation. Here we go. Not pretty. Not pretty at all for the Ukrainian military. So that's where we set for today. As always, thanks for joining us. More to come. Have a good day.